going to the conversations of the day here on the Move, and we're starting with a conversation on gambling. Many see it as a form of entertainment and a way to keep busy, and sometimes maybe a way to make a little bit of extra money. However, here in South Africa, in fact, according to the National Gambling Board, South Africa spent 1.1 trillion rand in the local gambling industry between April 2023 and March 2024. And as global best practices evolve when it comes to the gambling sector, are we doing enough to monitor gambling behavior and intervene early to prevent harm? South Africa is not blind to this trend at all. The country was one of the early pioneers in some areas of responsible gambling, and we've heard a number of ads and campaigns around responsible gambling here in South Africa. But several protective measures are already mandated. However, with the rise of online gambling and many other gambling practices, is enough being done? We're looking at whether South Africa is doing enough to protect gamblers in the country, and we're talking about the success of gambling recovery programs as well. We're joined on the line by Colin King, Gamblers Anonymous South Africa. Thank you so much, Colin, for your time and for joining us this morning. Let's speak about that. How much is gambling rising in the country?
Hi, good morning, Palesa, Benjamin, and of course the platform listeners. Thank you for having me. It's a privilege and a great honor to be here. Yeah, in my opinion, I always say gambling sadly is a pandemic over and above the COVID pandemic. Why do I say that? Yes, I'm part and parcel of a huge organization. Aside from that, I deal with members, addicts in brackets on a daily basis. And sadly, this addiction has got absolutely no, gender, as in race, or even color, or title, profession. And sadly, it's hitting the poorest of the poor, in my opinion. And yeah, if you ask me what's been done, in my opinion, I stress my opinion, not very much, for the mere fact that, yes, today one is exposed to online gambling. And sadly, that is a crazy one. Why do I say that? Yeah, one could sit in the comfort of their home, one could sit in front of the family, one could sit in front of the boss. I've even noticed people gambling while they're driving. So it's so convenient, unlike me in the past, where I had to now pick up fights at home in order to get to a physical room, as in a casino or bookmaker for that matter. As I say, today, sadly, it's at my fingertips. I don't need to go anywhere. I can do it at my leisure. And yeah, that's to me very, very crazy. It's taking on to another level. I heard you mention figures. I've just been doing my own research. The figures has actually reached 1.4 trillion. And that, to me, is crazy. But yeah, that's the reality of this addiction. And like I say, it's got no gender, no profession, no age attached to it. And you get unfortunately caught in this web. It's definitely an addiction. And the difference is, in my opinion, alcoholism, you could see if I'm sloshed when I get to work or home. If I'm on a drug, you can see there's something wrong. My eyes is red or whatever. But unfortunately with gambling, it's a hidden illness. I personally have hid it for almost 4 decades plus. So that itself gives you an idea as to how insidious this addiction is, if that answers your question, Palesa.
Yeah, well,
it is, Palesa.
Yeah, it is Palesa. Yeah, you're with Palesa and Ben. Let's talk a little bit about what you see there as a problem, because it has been mainstreamed. I think one of the ways that you see it being mainstream is the fact that it's on every advertising corner that you look. I mean, in sports, the main advertisers are gambling institutions. When you look at the different apps that are available on your phone, you find gambling everywhere in the advertising there, but also the apps to be involved in gambling. It's just becoming almost like commonplace for us to see gambling as a norm. Is that where you find the problem at, the fact that we are making it normal?
Well, to be very honest, you use the right word. We're making it normal. Why? Again, everywhere I drive, there's a big billboard that entices me. There's a big jackpot. You go onto your phone. I'm not so technically minded, but again, I go onto my phone. Next thing, a gambling ad pops up as in a betting site. I watch TV and there's a betting site. Now, my question is, where do I go if I'm a still suffering addict? Because I'm being hit 24/7 in the face with triggers. These are called triggers. As much as I want to stop, my problem is everywhere I turn, I'm being shown or I'm being exposed to these ads. And that to me is very frightening. The other very important thing as well, we're living in very trying times. Again, this is my opinion. And of course, whether you're at the bottom, the middle, you're always in need of funds because sadly, enough is never enough. Again, I don't mean that in a disrespectful way.
Yeah.
But end of the day, you think, okay, this is a quick fix, get rich scheme. Yeah, on the first few bets, maybe, you end up being a bit lucky and you think, wow, well, this is exactly what went down in my life. Wow, this is the way to go. Why do I need to work? And sadly, it's just a matter of time before the bug bites you. And when that bug bites you, it's not only my assets, my liquid that I'm now utilizing. I'm going into desperation mode, whereby I'm chasing my losses. And of course, that's where the borrowing, the stealing, the manipulation, and comes in. And of course, theft is a huge one. Again, not meant in a disrespectful way, but that is the norm. If I don't have money, I'm going to make a plan, thinking that today is going to be the day where I'm going to hit the big one, hopefully be able to live happily ever after, pay my debt. And yeah, that is the mindset of the still suffering addict as in a gambler.
Yeah. Colin, not so long ago, we were having a conversation here on the show with someone speaking about Gen Zs and how they now use gambling as a side hustle, so actively so, and they also normalizing that as well. Sports betting and online gambling is just a way for them to make extra money. Let's speak about responsible gambling. We need to take a short break, but I want you to keep that in mind because for as long as I've known in South Africa, there's always like warning signs. Don't forget to gamble responsibly after an ad. There's fine print after every ad to say, hey, gamble responsibly, it's important. Yeah. And campaigns that have been put in place for responsible gambling. But is that enough? And that's where I want to touch after our break. Stay with us. We're speaking about gambling and whether or not, South Africa is doing enough to protect gamblers in the country. Stay with us.
The KwaZulu-Natal Convention Bureau, in collaboration with Milvest Advisory and the City of Moshatama, brings you the 2025 Tourism Investment Forum, Africa. By positioning these regions for sustainable growth, TIFA helps drive their economic ambitions while providing access to critical capital, networks, and strategic insights on investments in the trade services sector, such as tourism. Join us for the TIFA 2025 from August 27 to 29 at Tembela Venue, Richards Bay, KZN, South Africa. Be part of the movement transforming tourism and infrastructure in Africa.
Palesa and Benjamin, fuel your day. Fresh African perspective on Channel Africa.
Hey, there was a time where gambling was something that you had to go to a casino for, but now it's just a few minutes away, a few seconds away. It's right there on your phone, and it's so easy for you to access a gambling site and to indulge in it. Today, we're looking at whether or not South Africa is doing enough to protect gamblers and the talk about the success of gambling recovery programs. Colin King is joining us from Gamblers Anonymous South Africa. Colin, Palesa was asking the question earlier on around whether we have enough to protect people from gambling, but also to make sure that people gamble in a responsible way. I don't know if it's possible to gamble in a responsible way, because you did highlight that it is an addiction. So it feels like a contradiction to me. What's your take on the things that we are doing on the ground to make sure that those who are gambling are doing it in a way that is helping them not to do it too much?
Thank you. Thank you, Ben. Yeah, look, first and foremost, I'm a recovering alcoholic. I'm thankful it's 33 years since my last drink, and likewise, just on 12 years since my last bet. This is my opinion. Once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. However, it doesn't mean I need to stay an active alcoholic. I have the choice. I have the choice and that is to go into recovery as to lead a better life. The same with gambling. However, in my opinion, there's no such a thing as responsible gambling to me. I'd never be able to gamble responsibly. Again, I'm not undermining the prevention. I wouldn't say prevention. All of these things that helps or is intended to help the person to gamble responsibly. There are social gamblers, but again, I want to make my point very clear. Again, I'm not putting these institutes down. Please do not misunderstand me. These are business institutes. Yes, they claim it's a social thing, but of course, they will never be able to be in business should they be only having those social gamblers who go in there once a month, once in 3 months, once in 6 months. Sadly, it's addicts like me and others that keep these institutes alive. So my question again would be, would I ever be able to gamble responsibly? My answer to me, absolutely not. No way. Because one bet to me is too many and 1,000 is too few, because I'm an addict. Only I can acknowledge that. And once I acknowledge that, the next best thing for me to do is to reach out for help. The same with alcohol, the same with drugs, or any other addiction for that matter. Eating is an overeating. Chocolates, you name it, there's a string of addictions. Sadly, this is taking its toll. And yeah, not just in our country, around the world.
Yeah.
Why? Because it's so easily accessible. So yeah, in as far as responsible, again, I beg to differ with that. I'm not saying they're not doing enough. Yes, there is some things being done, but my opinion, not enough. Why? Because I'm still exposed to these places.
Yeah. Colin, as far as I know, I know a lot and I've heard about recovery programs for drug users, for alcohol users. And in fact, if you ask anyone, you'll say, oh, there's AA, there's this and that for, drugs and alcohol. But I don't think we hear enough about gambling recovery and gambling recovery programs. Are there enough gambling recovery programs in South Africa? And where are they? How do they actually work?
Thank you again, Palesa. Yeah, I'm actually putting my neck on the block here. Why? Because Gamblers Anonymous do not promote adverts. However, for the benefit of our community that's getting ripped apart. Yes, there's definitely help. As in Gamblers Anonymous, it's an organization by it helps the still suffering addict as in gambling. And of course, in my opinion, I've tried everything possible in the book to stop. Nothing helped beside when I got in touch with this organization called GA. This is my lifeline, will always be my lifeline. This has actually changed my life 360 degrees. But I always say change only happens if I choose to change. Nothing changes if nothing changes. And of course, it all starts with me, but the help is there. So, yeah, if that answers the question. Yes, we're not as huge as AA, but again, we are spreading our wings because this is becoming another pandemic over above the COVID pandemic that we've all been through not so long ago.
That is so true. It is becoming a pandemic indeed. In fact, I was telling a story about a drive home with my son yesterday, and there was just a large crowd of people gathered on one side of the road. And my son was like, what's going on over there? I looked up and it was a sports betting place and it was packed. It was around 6 p.m. that evening. And it shows that people are actually going more into gambling, and it's becoming more of an everyday norm in our country. Is South Africa doing enough to be responsible in protecting gamblers and those who enjoy gambling? Maybe not even just the addicts, but those who also haven't become addicted as yet.
As I said earlier, there is a few things that they are exposing the still suffering addict to. In other words, be aware. If you feel you have a problem, call this number. But again, my opinion is what really has been is done in terms of the overexposure of ads on phones, on TVs, and. I believe if we look at that in a much stronger light, that would be a serious deter in terms of me crossing that invisible line. Like you just said, you passed, and next thing you saw, it was a sport betting facility whereby people, yes, because now we're back with football. We're back with all other sports, even local football. And you can, I mean, if I was in active addiction, I can tell you now, I would place a bet almost every second of the game, and there's 90 minutes in a game, because you can place a bet on virtually any movement in a game. That itself shows how crazy it is. And if you're an addict, sadly, you're going to get sucked in, because one bet is too few and 1,000 is still too few. So, bottom line is, it's like an alcoholic, which I am, but difference is I'm in recovery. I don't need a glass of champagne, which has got a few percentage of alcohol. I need a fresh drink, as in a soft drink. I'm fooling myself and nobody else if I have to toast with the champagne. And likewise, who am I fooling if I was to say to myself, I'll just place one bet because something looks very good for today? I'm just fooling myself and nobody else, because one is too many and 1,000 is too few. That's the reality.
Yeah.
So, yeah, not very much in my opinion. Again, I'm not undermining the gambling board or NRGP. That's where you reach out for help, whereby they offer you free sessions. I think it's 8 sessions, whereby you can see a therapist in your area. And of course, from there, my question is, again, with no disrespect, from there, where to? It's like saying I'm going into a rehab. Fine. Rehab to me is, is a safe zone. Once I come out of there, whether it's 28, 30, or 60 days later, I'm facing the world. Do I have the tools to face the world?
Well, Colin, we're running out of time, unfortunately. Tell us where we can go to find out more about Gamblers Anonymous.
Sure. If you, in fact, Selena has got the hotline number, but if you give me a moment, I will give it to you now again.
Okay. Let's see.
Right.
If
it's 060.
Okay.
624.
Sure.
7140, or you could use my private number 061 494 0865. I'll be only too happy to help and reach my hand out to the still suffering addict.
Well, don't forget to add the South African code if you want to get more information from Colin, +27. That's South Africa's country code, +27. It's 9:30 Central African time. Thank you so much, Colin. That was Colin King, Gamblers Anonymous, South Africa. And that conversation takes us to our sports update. I see that, the US Open is something I'm interested about. Alcaraz is back in. So, yeah, man, so much is happening in sports. Let's find out what's happening in other sports as well in our news desk.
Sports on Channel Africa. The African Perspective.